Please open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 11. Matthew, the 11th chapter, and place your bookmark. Matthew chapter 11, and place your bookmark. It's so good to see you all here this morning. Sundays are the best day of the week. And we relish this time together where we can come together to sing songs of praise to our great and holy God, where we can study some from His Word, where we can partake of the Lord's Supper and honor Him and His death and His resurrection and the glory that will come for us. And we are mindful of all of these many blessings as we sing these songs and as we think about these things, and it truly makes these times together so precious indeed. Wednesday night, I got up at the end of services and warned you that we were going to talk about something very important this coming Sunday morning that I think we all need, but especially our younger people, our younger families, our younger kids. And then I had about 17 people come up after services and say, "We're gone this Sunday. We're gone." It was planned before, I think. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say it was planned before. But we ended up having quite a few folks gone, and I did debate on changing the lesson, but then I finally just said, forget it, I'm going out with it anyways. We got YouTube, they can go back and listen to it later, and I hope that they do, because this is a really important topic for all of us, but especially for our teenagers. And so I want you to really think about the things that we talk about in the lesson this morning, and you'll see why I smile when I say this. If you have any questions about this topic, then let's talk. Let's talk because it's important. Matthew chapter 11, beginning in verse 1. And it came to pass, when Jesus finished commanding His 12 disciples, that He departed from there to teach and to preach in their cities. Now when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples and said to him, "Are you the coming one, or do we look for another?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Go and tell John the things you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who is not offended because of me." This year we've been surveying the Bible from the Old Testament through the New Testament, beginning to end, and we've been talking about these individuals who are dead and yet still have much to say. They being dead yet speak, and that phrase comes from Hebrews chapter 11. We need to give some serious consideration to these people because some of them are great heroes of our faith. Some of them, though they are great heroes, have great failures in their lives. And yet, whether it is good or whether it is bad, they all are saying something. And so we've been giving some time. We've been giving some time to these particular individuals, men and women alike, Old and New Testament, to figure out what they would say to us. I don't think John is an exception. I think John has a lot to say to the Christian today. And so I want to give some thought to what he says in this text. I'm going to have to give you the benefit of the doubt this morning and assume that you already know John's story a little bit. If you want a fresher, you can go read Luke chapter 1. Nearly the entire chapter surrounds this man, John the Baptizer. Baptist is not actually his last name, so don't start thinking, well, that's his last name, and he's the founder of the Baptist church. Nope, none of those things are true. His name is, that title is rather attributed to him because that's what he was doing. He was a man who was baptizing people, and so once in a while I'll catch myself saying John the Baptizer because that's what he was doing. That was the actions he was performing for these individuals. Well, John has a lot to say, but here's what I want to do this morning. I want to actually talk about some of the things that happen in Matthew 11 and around Matthew 11. Look at verse 3 again. John asks him, through his 2 disciples he sends to Jesus, "Are you the coming one, or do we look for another?" Let me tell you what that is. It's a moment of doubt. I don't know when this happened, but over the last several decades, that's almost become a dirty word. If somebody says they have doubts, they're supposed to do it kind of in a quiet whisper. I have doubts. And they're supposed to cover their mouth when they say it. And they're kind of supposed to keep that to themselves. And yet, folks, that mindset is catastrophic to your faith. It can be catastrophic to other people's faith. We want to develop a culture in this congregation where we are comfortable talking about doubts on occasion. We're willing to talk about these sorts of things that we're struggling with and we want to figure out that we're unsure about, that we're uncertain about. And let me just tell you, the Bible never hides from this topic. Never do you see doubt talked about in the Bible in hushed tones and in closed closets. In fact, it's quite the contrary. That book about faith is full of people who doubted. Does that surprise you a little bit? Well, if you're a seasoned Bible student, it surely doesn't. What would John say to the modern Christian today about doubt? How we handle it, how we approach it, how we overcome it. I think John would sit down and very frankly tell us several things, but I'm going to give you 3 this morning. And I want you to really think about what I say. I said it a moment ago. I want to say it again. Especially you younger people. And the younger people that are here, I know most of the younger people are gone this weekend. Everybody vacationed at the same time. This is where you text all of the friends that you have in this congregation and you say, you need to listen to that lesson. Because I'm talking to you. Here's what John would say. Number 1, everyone doubts. Now that's open-ended. I get that. That's open-ended. But I want it seared into your mind that everyone has doubts. There are no exceptions to the rules. There are no supreme faith heroes that never doubted, never wavered, never waffled. They're all stories of individuals who struggled at some time. Now let me give you an example of this. Go to John 1. Go to John 1. Mark your spot in Luke 11 and go to John the Gospel, chapter 1. This is another one of those gospel accounts that tells us quite a bit about John and his work as the baptizer and the forerunner of Jesus Christ. But I want you to pay attention to the language he uses here. Brother Mark read for us a moment ago, verses 6 through 8, where John the Apostle talks about John the baptizer. And he describes him as a man sent from God to bear witness of the light. And that light is Jesus Christ. I want you to go down to verse 19. We're going to skim some of this, but this is important stuff. Verse 19, this is the testimony of John, that's the baptizer. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but he confessed, "I am not the Christ." And they asked him, "What then, are you Elijah?" And he said, "I'm not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Then they said, "Who are you, that we may give an account of to those who sent us? What do you say about yourself?" And here he says, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord." He quotes Isaiah 40. He says, I'm part of this framework. I am the one who's bringing about the Messiah. That's my duty, that's my job. Now notice what he says here. Verse 24. So those who were sent were from the Pharisees. They asked him, verse 25, "Why then do you baptize if you're not the Christ, if you're not Elijah, if you're not the prophet?" And John says, "Listen, I baptize with water, but there is one coming among you whom you do not know. It is he who comes after me. He is preferred before me, whose sandal straps I am not worthy to loose." These things were done in Bethabara, beyond the Jordan where John was baptizing. Now just think about what he just said. This is the Christ, and he has an extremely exalted view of this Messiah, doesn't he? I'm not even worried to stoop down and loose his sandals. Does he believe Jesus to be, does he believe the Christ to be somebody of significance? You bet he does. Verse 29. The next day John saw Jesus coming toward him, and he said, Behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. This is He of whom I said, After me comes a man who is preferred before me, for He was before me, and I did not know Him, but that He should be revealed to Israel. Therefore I came baptizing with water. And John bore witness, saying, I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and He remained on Him. And I did not know Him, but He who sent me to baptize with water said to me, Upon whom you see the Spirit descending and remaining on Him, this is He who baptizes with the Holy Spirit. And I have seen and testified that this is the Son of God. Now, folks, the baptizer just connected Jesus to all that He said in verses 26 and 27. Here's the one who is so much more preferred before me that it's not even comparable. Here's the one who is the coming one. Here's the one who is the Messiah. Here's the one I'm not even worthy to undo His sandals. Did you catch verse 33? Or verse 32? I saw the Spirit descending on this one. In verse 33, he says, I heard the voice say, Upon whom you see the Spirit descending and remaining on Him, this is He who it baptizes with the Holy Spirit. It's a reference to the baptism of Jesus, by the way, that John doesn't record for us. Who does John the Baptizer believe Jesus to be in John 1? There is no hesitation. There is no doubts in his mind. This is the Christ of God. This is the Messiah. This is the Anointed One. This is the King of Israel, which will be recorded in a moment from another mouth. Folks, go back to Matthew 11. I hope you have it marked there. Go back to Matthew 11. Look at verse 2. When John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent two of his disciples, and he said to Jesus, through his two disciples, Are you the coming one? Or do we look for another? Well, what happened? You see, in John 1, he has no problem making the declaration that this is the Christ of God, this is the anointed of God, this is the one the Spirit descended upon. But what happens between John 1 and Matthew 11? Well, Matthew's going to tell us in chapter 14 that he's arrested and he's put into prison because of his stance on marriage and divorce and his opposition to King Herod. Folks, I tell you what, you read John 1, and the question that maybe comes to your mind, it comes to my mind, is how could he have doubted? What happened between those 2 points? Well, folks, it is the primary point here. Everyone has doubts. Everyone wrestles with these questions. Everyone has these concerns. There's a possibility, if you want to just kind of think in very temporal terminology, if he believes that Jesus is the Christ, what was the Jewish perception of the Christ? Warrior king. Right? Restore the kingdom to Israel. If that's his perception, it's false. Jesus corrects his disciples for that viewpoint. But wouldn't it be very easy to think, well, wait a minute, if he's really the Christ, why am I in jail? See, if he's really the Christ, he would save me from this imprisonment. Isn't that a pretty natural way to think? And maybe that's what he's wrestling with here. Maybe that's why he's thinking, well, maybe this isn't really Jesus because I'm still in jail. If he was the real Messiah, he would have already freed me and we'd be whipping Rome by now. Well, maybe that's his perception on the matter. It doesn't say. Really makes no difference, does it? We all fight that sometimes, don't we? If God loved me, He wouldn't let this happen. You ever felt that way? If God was good, the doctor would not bring in news like that. Felt that way? Folks, it's a very easy place to go mentally and emotionally. And it's the same place that almost all of your heroes of the Bible went. When life got difficult for Abraham, what did he do? He doubted God too. When life got difficult for Job, What did he do? I'd like to talk to you, God. I got some questions. And what does God do? He responds in the whirlwind in chapter 38. And he reminds him, you aren't God. I am. Job had questions. Job doubted the goodness of God. Job doubted the reliability of God. You think David ever doubted God? Go read some of the Psalms. I cry out to you, O God, where are you? I lay in my bed and I cry all night, God, where are you? Do you ever feel that way? All of your heroes did too. All of them. They all felt this way. Moses doubted God. Hey, God, maybe you should send somebody else into Egypt. God, I'm not sure that that's the way we need to do it. They all doubted. They all doubted. They all doubted. One individual said, don't suppress doubts. Express doubts. I really like that. I don't know where you are mentally right now, and I don't know where you are emotionally right now. And I don't know some of the things you've thought about, some of the things you've considered. I don't know some of the things you've personally struggled with. But I want you to understand something. Let's just think big picture for a second. You ever struggled believing in God? Lots of people have. You wouldn't be the first. You ever struggled believing that God spoke? That the Bible is really His Word? You ever felt that way? You ever wrestled with some of those thoughts? You're not the first. You're not the first Christian who's wondered about those things. You ever wondered if that's the totality of God's information for mankind, or if there's outlying books out there somewhere? You're not the first who's thought that. You go down the list. And I want to reiterate the point, you won't be the first who has struggled with that topic. Believe Jesus existed historically? Do you believe Jesus died on the cross and was buried in the tomb and rose the third day? Do you struggle believing that? You're not the first. You're not the first. And sometimes that point alone is so helpful, isn't it? Good, faithful Christians who waged the good fight before you all thought these things, all struggled with these things. And what's so incredible about this book that God gave us is He records it for us. Let's take the easy one. The resurrection of Jesus. You believe Jesus came back from the dead? Struggled with that belief maybe? Go read the end of all of the gospel accounts. Thomas has a nickname, doesn't he? It's not a fair nickname, by the way. I think we should call him Believing Thomas. But nobody listens to me. I'm making a proposition for it. Believing Thomas. What Thomas was practical. People don't come back from the dead, my friends. Except Jesus. And when he was presented with enough information, the evidence, he believed it. Folks, this book is full of people who struggled with these things. But I want you to understand something. Get the point. Everyone doubts. But not all doubts are created equal. There are different types of doubt. There are intellectual doubts, where what you want is just more information. And the minute you get more information, you'll believe the facts. That's what Christianity wants from us. God wants from us in Christianity for you to accept the facts, the evidence put forth in the gospel, put forth in history, to validate all of the claims of Christ. It's facts. And the minute we come to that intellectual point where we understand those things, we're good now. That's what we want. But folks, intellectual doubt is not the same thing as emotional doubt. Emotional doubt is a response to the circumstances of life, where things get very difficult, things get very tough, and all of a sudden now we're doubting. You want to see that in the Bible? Go read Abraham. You want to see that in the Bible? Go read Job. You want to see that in the Bible? Go read David in the Psalms. You want to see that in the Bible? Look at John while he is in prison and wondering, is Jesus really the Christ? Why? I think his situation had a lot to do with it. The third type of doubt is voluntary doubt, where you just choose to not believe. I'm going to tell you something, folks. You can choose to believe the facts, or you can choose to ignore the facts. There are plenty of good intellectual reasons to believe the gospel of Jesus Christ, and there are plenty of good evidentiary reasons to believe it in spite of emotional turmoil. But if you're going to choose to ignore all of those things, there's nothing we can do to help. You choose to believe. This is what's on the rise in our culture. God has high moral demands, doesn't He? He wants you to be holy, for He is holy. And the minute we don't like His holy standards, I'm not sure I believe Jesus ever existed. Wait a minute now. Are you saying there's not enough evidences to prove that? Are you saying there's not enough good textual witnesses in the Bible that prove Jesus came back from that? Or are you just saying you don't want to live up to His standards? You see what I'm saying? There's two different spectrums here. Totally different ends of the spectrum. One writer even said, doubt your doubts. I like that. Doubt your doubts. Be honest with your doubts. Is this an intellectual doubt where I just want more information? Is this an emotional doubt where it's because I'm going through a hard time? Or is it a voluntary doubt where I just don't want to believe? Well, you're going to get your answers if you'll be honest. Number two, express your doubts. Now, go back to the text in Matthew 11. Go back to the text in Matthew 11. You understand everyone doubts at some point. Everyone doubts. Look at what John does, though, through his disciples. Verse 3, he asks the question, are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Folks, we can't know that we're doubting, and this congregation can't know that you're doubting. They can't help you through your doubts if you don't express your doubts. The last thing I want to do, folks, is create doubts. In class this morning, we talked a little bit about the criticisms of the book of Ephesians. In class a few weeks ago, Phyllis asked me about Romans 16, verses 1 and 2. There are people who take the viewpoint that Phoebe was a female deacon, and so then they authorize, female leadership in local churches and things like that from that viewpoint. And she made the point, she said, how would we ever know that? And I thought, well, you wouldn't know that just by reading your Bible. But here's what I want you to think about. Part of what I try to do, and this is me personally, Russ and I sometimes have a different take on these things, but I don't want you to ever be surprised by a criticism of the Bible. If there's somebody out there, now we all know the outliers. There are people who don't believe that book is God's at all. Well, we'll just dismiss that for the time being. But there are people who believe in Jesus Christ, who call themselves Christians, who don't believe that every book in that Bible was written by an inspired man. And there are parts of individual texts that have some complicated areas where there are some doctrinal viewpoints that are not biblical. I don't want you to be surprised by something in that book. And I don't want you to be surprised by somebody who may argue against the book. It's part of the reason why I try not to belabor the points, but it's part of the reason why I will occasionally offer you, hey, this is a criticism of this book. Here's somebody out there who's a good scholar, who's a pretty conservative scholar, who doesn't believe Paul wrote Ephesians. Here's a good scholar who takes the viewpoint that the church in Ephesus never received this letter. Well, I want you to at least know about those things, not to cause doubt, but so that you're aware of it. Folks, doubt is really not the killer. Doubt is not always the issue. Silence is. You've got to express your doubts before they can be resolved. I know of a situation where a young man was raised in the church. He had heard the preaching from the pulpit all of his life, and some close family members fell away and went into Catholicism. And the arguments that were presented, the young man had never heard before in his life. Had never heard them before. You talk about shaking his faith. Just almost lost it. All because other people had doubted and then argued against the text, argued against the book, and he'd never even heard of it. I don't want to get technical, and I don't want to get over everybody's heads, and I don't want to talk about academic stuff that nobody cares about, but at the same time, I want you to be equipped. I want you to be equipped so that you can know how to silence these doubts. You ask me sometime later, and I'll tell you that's a big reason why I'm a preacher. I've watched too many people fall away, folks. I've watched too many people have their faith derailed, all because they didn't have some of the information they needed. There was a study recently done. It says, according to our study, which looked at 500 youth, over 70% of church-going high schoolers report having serious doubts about their faith. Sadly, less than half of those young people shared their doubts and struggles with an adult or friend. Did you get what I just said? Over 70% of high school kids doubt their faith, seriously doubt their faith, but they don't feel comfortable to ask someone about it. God forbid that happen here. Ask your questions. Can I just tell you, even from an encouragement aspect, I love getting questions because it shows me you're in the book at other times. Now, I like questions about stuff I've talked about too, but man, when you ask me a question about something I've not preached on, I've not taught from in a while, it shows me you're getting into the book away from me and away from the pulpit and away from classes. That's an encouragement. So don't rob me of the encouragement. Don't rob Russ of the encouragement. Ask your questions. That's not just for young people. That's for older people. That's for all people. Ask good questions. Express your doubts. Then we can help you. I want you to be comfortable asking questions here. And if I can only get one point across in the whole lesson, it would be that. Ask good questions, folks. No one should ever be afraid to ask. And challenge these people you're asking. We've got good shepherds in this congregation. Ask them some questions. We've got good deacons in this congregation. Ask them some. We got mediocre preachers. Ask them some questions. And I want to encourage you, don't settle for, that's how we've always done it. Because that's not going to help you grow faith. But ask good questions. Why do we take up a contribution on the first day of the week? Why do we set aside time every Sunday for the Lord's Supper? Well, that's the way we've always done it. That is not good enough. We've got to ask these good questions and we've got to demand Bible answers. We've got to encourage deep study and deep thought and not make excuses. There's only two ways this will go, folks. If you ask me a question, it's either going to be something that I either have an immediate answer for. I guess three ways. Either I have an immediate answer for it, or I need to study it more. I love that. Give me something to study. Or after I've studied it, I've realized I don't think it matters that much. There's going to be some of those too. I'm not afraid of any of those. I love having answers to good questions. I love studying more. And that third one sometimes is a result of studying more. I don't guess that point really matters that much. Ask good questions. We're not settling for less around here than Bible answers. The recent Indiana Jones movie, there's a scene, and I'm not giving any spoilers away. So just you relax. Because it's in the previews. There's a scene where Harrison Ford makes the comment, essentially, he says, I've learned in my life that it's really not so much about what you believe, just as long as you believe in it. Not so much, my friend. You can believe all you want. But if you can't back it with the book, then it is false information. You ask us a question around here, we're not going to just tell you, well, that's just the way we've always done it. You ask us a question around here, we're not going to say, well, I just believe we don't need to worry about that. Ask good questions, demand Bible answers. And then here's what's going to happen as a result. It's going to erase your doubts. In Acts chapter 17, verse 11, Acts chapter 17, verse 11, this very thing happens. Now, you don't have to turn there right now, but Acts chapter 17, verse 11, the Bereans are presented with information, and what they do is examine it with the book. They examine what Paul is preaching with what they have heard, what they have been told, with the Old Testament Scripture, and then they validate the message, they prove the message, and they accept the message. The only way, folks, you can erase doubt is by expressing it and addressing it. Go back to chapter 9 of Matthew. I want to very quickly hit this because I think this is really important. Matthew chapter 9, look at verse 14. Matthew 9, verse 14. The disciples of John came to Jesus and they said, notice this, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" What does Jesus do to the question? He answers it. He answers it. And now they don't know. Or now they know now. Jump over to chapter 12. Chapter 12 of Matthew. Chapter 12. Look at verse 10. Even when it's not a sincere question, Matthew 12, verse 10, "Behold, there was a man who had a withered hand, and they asked him, saying, 'Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?' That they might accuse him." And what does he do? Verse 11, he answers it. Look at verse 23. Verse 23, "The multitudes were amazed, and they said, 'Could this be the Son of David?' But the Pharisees heard this. They said, 'This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of the demons.' And Jesus knew their thoughts, and He answers them. He says to them, here it is. You go over to chapter 13. Chapter 13, verse 10. The disciples come to Him, and they say, verse 10 of chapter 13, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" Jesus just dismisses them and goes on. The chapter ends there, doesn't it? No, He answers it. He answers it, and now they know. Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Look at verse 2. Chapter 15, verse 2. "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." And He answers them. He says it. Here it goes. And He rebukes them in the process. Chapter 17. Folks, we could do this all day. Chapter 17. Look at verse 2. Or excuse me, verse 10. His disciples asked Him, saying, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus answers. Explains it, and now they know. It happens again in verse 19. It happens again in chapter 18. It happens again in chapter 19 with the issue of divorce. Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? Jesus then answers them. The only way to erase your doubt is to express your doubt. And have those answered. Have those questions answered directly from the Word and the will of God. Ask good questions with a good attitude. And then be honest with the answers. Evaluate your doubts. Are you feeling this way because of hardship in your life? You lose a spouse. You lose a child. By the way, spiritually or physically. You lose a job. It's all related to losses. You lose your health or your mobility. Are you doubting God, and are you doubting His Word? Are you doubting His goodness? Are you doubting His character because you are facing something? Evaluate your doubts. And then address them with some good questions, with some good answers. Honest answers. The only way you can clean up a mess is if you know it's there. I used to get a kick out of the girls when they were little. They would want me to clean up after them. Oh, I say they would want me. It's still a present tense. They still want me to clean up after them for every mess. But something that happened when they were little, I'm sure this is not an experience that's only to me, they'd make an awful mess in another bedroom where I didn't know it was there. And then wouldn't tell me about it until I'm walking through in my socks and my foot catches on what appears to be syrup in the middle of a bedroom floor. Oh, they want me to clean it up, but let me tell you something about stuff like syrup. It's sticky. If you clean it up when it's fresh, it's easier to clean up. You wait till that stuff dries, well, then you're down there on your hands and knees with your pocket knife, scratching at it and trying not to scuff the floor. Folks, doubt is like syrup spilled in the bedroom floor. If you'll address it early, it'll be a little easier to clean up. But if you let that mess linger, it'll stick. If you were to sit down with John the Baptizer, John, what would you tell the Christian living 2,000 years after you? I'm going to tell you something. I think he would be a very comforting person to talk to. Everyone doubts. Even the great John the Baptizer, whom Jesus said there is not a greater one born among women. Whoa, that's high praise. Even he doubted. I think he would remind you, you need to express your doubts. And that's the only way you're going to erase your doubts. By the way, that's what happens in Matthew 11, isn't it? Jesus says, you go back and tell him. What Jesus was doing was fulfilling all of the Old Testament language for the Messiah, and that is who Jesus was. It's who Jesus is. Maybe you've struggled with your doubts, and you've had some questions, you've had some lingering concerns. Please, please, please talk to somebody about it. We have got good shepherds who want to lead you to the throne of glory. We've got good deacons. We've got good wives that support those men. We've got good men and women in this congregation that want to help you be more faithful to King Jesus. Do you have some doubts? Do you have some concerns? You want to talk about it in private? That's fine too. Pull me aside. Let's talk. You have a need of this congregation this morning. We'd invite you to make it known now as we stand and as we sing.